The payroll room is there. The lineup is still a question mark. Could the Guardians head into 2026 mostly the same roster? We break down where this offseason ends with major moves, familiar faces on a Locked On Guardians mailbag edition.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Guardians fans, welcome on in. Thanks for hanging out with us for the next half hour as we talk about your Cleveland Guardians on Locked On Guardians, the only daily podcast that covers your Cleveland Guardians every day, from the majors, the minors, the draft, and everything in between. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I'm Justin Lada, one of your two co-hosts here for the last 3 years and counting. Very grateful to be so. With my friend and co-host Jeff Ellis, and I've spent 18 years covering the Guardians minor league system as a prospect writer and editor.
As you mentioned, I'm Jeff Ellis, one of your two co-hosts here. Have been since Locked On expanded into baseball 6 years ago, nearly 7. Before that, I was a national writer at Scout and 24/7, focused on prospects and the draft. I want to thank you for making today's episode your first listen today and every day, wherever it is that you get podcasts. And then I also want to take a moment and say a big thank you to all of our everydayers out there, to everyone who is joining in the conversations, who's recommending it, who's showing all of their raps, all of those fun things. We really love seeing how much you've enjoyed the show this year and how much it has stood out to you. And I want to give a shout out to everydayer David Bussing 6787. Very kind comments on Twitter today. So thank you for that. One of our many great everydayers.
Yes, plenty of great everydayers, great insiders too, who gave us all the questions for today's mailbag. We're going to cover quite a bit today on the show. So we'll talk about who we keep, who we flip, who will be the best trade target to sound the Guardians' outfield problems. We'll talk about which prospects are going to find redemption in 2026. But we start out with the Guardians front office. Are they going to stand pat? Or are they going to actually add some help? Lot to cover. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code Locked On MLB. That will get you $20 off your first purchase. We are heading into the winter meetings coming up next week. So this is our last episode before they start. Technically, they don't really start in earnest till Monday, but I don't expect a whole lot of buzz over the weekend. We'll see what kind of comes about. I believe the winter meetings are in Orlando, right? I'd love to be in Orlando just to be down there for the weather, but my father-in-law's down there. Maybe I should tell him to walk winter meetings and see what Chris Anthony's up to.
Can I ask you one question before we dive in? Does anyone ask? Our comments are full of this, and I just want to take a minute and talk about it. If there's no question, did anyone ask about Teoscar Gonzalez or Hernandez?
Oscar Hernandez, yeah. Not in our insiders.
So I just want to put this out there since we have all these comments. The Los Angeles Dodgers desperately needed outfielders, right? Michael Conforto failed. They ran out and struggled with outfielders all last year. So if a team with a lot of money who needs outfielders is willing to trade away an outfielder who has an okay contract, I think that says enough. Teoscar Gonzalez's data is not good. He's in decline. Yeah. Move on from there. That's the 1 minute. If a team who can afford him and needs outfielders isn't keeping that outfielder, guess what? He's not that good.
You don't want him.
Yes, you don't want the guy that the team that has a need there is trying to get rid of.
Yes, he's essentially the best case scenario that Jonathan Rodriguez ever would have been, but he never will be. And he's quickly sliding into that territory as he ages into his career. So, yeah, I don't see that being a guy that Cleveland is going after. Speaking of big moves, Kevin wants to know, do we honestly see if the Guardians are going to make a move this offseason, a significant move? And could they pretty much go into next season with the same roster as 2025? I'm going to say no. I know it's going to be hard to land a big fish. They do have prospects to move. They're not going to attack in free agency in a big way. Like, we know that. They just don't do that. Not unless they can convince somebody to, I don't know, you've been saying that their one-year deals don't exist anymore. And I don't know how they'll play in the opt-out market if they give someone a 1+1 to give them some leverage. I don't know. It depends. But I think they'll do something in a trade to bring in an external bat. I think they keep saying it, and they have to prove they're going to do it, but they keep saying it. And last offseason, they talked about how they desperately needed to improve their pitching depth and their rotation. They went out and they tried to do that, and they
I think they did do that.
Did they succeed? I mean, at the end of the year, it was, Ortiz got suspended.
Yeah, I was gonna say they got derailed for things they couldn't count on. But Ortiz and Ciccone,
I think it's Ciccone. Ciccone did pitch. Bieber never pitched for them.
Josh Hartle being in the upper minors, like I think they were successful in that goal.
So I think because they were set out to do that last offseason, here's the problem. I think they backed themselves into a corner. If they don't actually go out and get a bat, I mean, Mike Chernoff, I think, made at least 2 mentions in the season post-mortem press conference of saying, we know we need outfield help. We know we need offensive help. You don't go and do that after making those comments. You've backed yourself into a corner. So,
but do we think they care? Like they have never really seemed to care.
Yes, they care.
I don't know. They've always kind of been like, they'll just come back and say, well, we know it's a need, but we're not going to, make ourselves worse as a team, or we're not going to, overpay. Like they at the end of the day,
they can't make themselves worse offensively. They cannot.
No, they can't. But it's going to be hard to be worse just because of the fact that young talent is getting close, should be ready to contribute this next year. That alone should make it, very hard for them to regress. I do think there's a trade to be made. I don't know if it's going to be a big move. I don't know if it's going to be an exciting move. I mean, there's a lot of people are already, frothing at the bit.
Donovan. No.
I still don't think Donovan. Like, I think there's a better chance of Nootbaar than Donovan personally. But, I know there's a lot of people who are like, oh, why haven't they done anything? It's like this team never, like, they didn't sign a free agent, I believe, until after the new year came. Like they're going to wait in the weeds. They're not.
They signed Bieber around the winter meetings last year.
But that was that was their guy though. That was like still, it's like a re-sign extension for a hurt player. Like that's not too shocking to me, but it's like getting someone external. They haven't typically done that, and they're going to wait for the dominoes to fall. Like we know the relief market's a place that they probably need help in. We've seen 2 of the bigger dominoes go.
Yeah.
It's a situation. I think they'll make a move. I still think they've got the positioning to do it. I don't know if it's going to be what people would qualify as a big move, but I think a move is going to come.
Well, the question was significant move. So
an upgrade is significant. So yes, I think they will.
Yeah. I think everyone's definition on that might be a little bit
different.
Ambiguous. Speaking of moves, David said, is 2026 just déjà vu all over again? Same questions as 2025. Questions linger in the outfield, second base, bullpen. Going in, I won't say the bullpen. Like, the pitch, there's no question on the pitching to me right now. The rotation is on solid ground. You always need depth. The bullpen looked great going into this year. But
there's no questions about the bullpen last year, and there was tons of questions about the rotation, and now there's none. So that alone makes a difference.
Yeah. The outfield thing has been a problem for, over a decade now. So you could say 2026 is the same as 2025 there, because it's a problem we've been talking about since, the last outfield I really liked on this team was when they had Brantley and Geyer and Chisenhall, and they got out and got Bruce. But of course, Chisenhall and Brantley were hurt that year. It's been a while. I mean, it's been long enough. The outfield has been very depressing. And then second base, that's a problem too, because nobody really stepped up and claimed that spot last year. I mean, Rocchio was good down the stretch, but him and Arias both, I don't sit here and say like, okay, that's your guy going forward, because neither guy to me looks like a guy that you're like, okay, this is our franchise second baseman or shortstop.
I don't know if you need a franchise. You just need Mr. Good Enough, right? That's what
you're not jumping to give either of them $100 million the way they did Andres Gimenez, even if that was a little foolhardy.
Well, again, you don't need a franchise. You just need Mr. Good Enough. You need a guy who is about league average. That's.
I wonder. We keep saying like you just need Mr. Right Now, but like we've been saying that for the last 2 years. So I wonder if like they need a little more than Mr. Right Now. You can do that at some positions, but like this position, I may guess we'll wait for Pisana and Hanau, but so I guess maybe you could handle Mr. Right Now if those guys are coming, but at some point you have to have.
Rocchio looked like a league average player last year. That's fine. You don't need a star. Like you can. Mr. Right Now is a guy who's there or not there. Yeah, once he came back up, like I think Rocchio has earned himself every opportunity. Like Rocchio should be in ink at one of those 2 spots. Gabby,
but okay.
I think
I'm letting them fight it out again for one more spot. If it's me, I'm adding an external infielder, and I'm saying I
just don't know, because if you don't get Donovan, who are you adding externally? There's just not a lot out there.
So Kevin Marte, obviously. Come on, I keep saying it.
0% chance.
Enough times it makes
0% chance.
Isn't that how that works in today's world? If I say it enough times, it's true, right?
No. I just think you're likely,
I don't
as
know.
much as people don't want to hear it, I think we're likely to start the year with those two, and then let guys like Brito and Bazana be, at some point next year.
So what you're saying is David is correct in his assessment then. All right. Well,
No, he's
we'll
not.
take to keep. It kind of is, actually, the way
Well, when we get back, I'll get my chance to actually do a full speak on why it's not quite right.
All right. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Steven Kwan and whether it would take to keep him in Cleveland, and Ralphy Velazquez ceiling. What does that look like? And where does Juan Brito stand? All that coming up on the rest of today's Locked On Guardians. The World Cup is coming back to North America for the first time since 1994, and 48 teams are in the tournament for the first time ever. It's going to be a massive event, and getting tickets to events like this, that's going to be really hard. So that's why apps like Game Time are super clutch. It finally gives fans the advantage back when it comes to snagging seats to these kind of events. You can track price drops in real time on Game Time, get alerts and great seats open. You can buy tickets the moment they hit the app for any of the matches, and it puts the power back in your hands. So it's making going to the World Cup an actual possibility for you instead of seeming impossible. Game Time makes a great, my wife and I like to give each other experience gifts for the holidays. So Game Time is a great place to do holiday shopping if you want to get someone tickets to any event. You can take the guesswork out of buying World Cup tickets in every match, concert, and event with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's going to get you $20 off your very first purchase. Terms apply. But again, download the app, make an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's going to get you $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Game Time. Thank you to everyone who makes us part of your daily routine on Locked On Guardians. We like hanging out with you wherever you go, talking Guardians baseball. And an even bigger thank you to everybody who has made Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. I can't believe that is a true statement, but I'm very grateful for it and everybody who's listening. So keep up to date with all things Locked On Guardians and Guardians all off season long. Hit the bell on YouTube. We'll have reaction videos coming your way if anything happens at the winter meetings. And you always get the newest episode in your feed. And if you auto download on all of your podcast apps, you'll have it in your feed ready to go whenever you're ready to listen to the show, no matter what you're doing. All right. So you wanted to talk about
just real quick
assessment, why he's wrong.
So a year ago, you didn't have any degree of certainty at second base and shortstop. I think Rocchio showed enough in that return. We said development isn't linear. He's been up and down. There was always good tools and traits. I think you feel good about one of those two spots. So a year ago, you didn't feel good about either. When you look at the outfield, yes, that is still the mess. And a year ago, we still weren't sure, like Manzardo. We thought he would contribute. We thought he'd be good. We didn't think he'd necessarily be the power hit he is. But now we have a defined first baseman that we feel comfortable with for the next 5 years. We have one of those two guys is set up. So you can move Rocchio to short and feel okay for, someone else. Like there is some definition there. I think the offense is in a better place in that regard. Because to me, a year ago, I was not sold on Rocchio. I wasn't sold on Gabby. There was no one up the middle. The outfield just stayed a mess. Catcher is still a question. First base, we now have it confirmed. So to me, it's been incremental steps in the right direction, but it is steps in the right direction.
I don't know. I guess I'm still glass half full on Rocchio. And you mentioned Manzardo at first base. He's still DH to me. He can't play first. Like he's a bad first baseman. So defensively, you're saying he's a first baseman. I'm not saying he is. I think he's a guy you could put there could hit, but I don't know about defense. Let's move on to the outfield real quick. Kevin wants to know what it's going to take to keep Steven Kwan in Cleveland. Look, he's not. I'm going to say right now, and I'm sure you can clip this if I'm wrong. Steven Kwan's going to play for the Guardians in 2026. He is. Beyond that, I don't know. I think the only answer I can give you, Kevin, is that they need a time machine to go back and figure out what the best contract was to keep him. Again, I think it's perfectly fine to let him play 26 and 27 out as a Guardian and then let things fall where they may. They have guys in the minors that can play left. You can put a CJ Kafis out there. You can put a Juan Brito out there. You can move Bazana out there if you want to. You've got other guys in the outfield that can go out there. I don't want to be locked into Kwan. I just don't like it. I wouldn't trade him either, though, because this team can't afford to trade guys with a league average offense at this point because they have to get better, and trading him doesn't make you better, in my opinion. But if you want to keep him long-term past 27, you'd have to go get a time machine and, I don't know, stop him from being inconsistent or offer a different contract.
Yeah, it's very interesting that everyone is very focused on this idea of keeping him because he had a second year where he was just league average or below. Like, so Kwan has had 4 years, two really good ones and 2 so-so ones. Yeah, he's not staying. It's just a full stop. And I think this team in general looks at a guy who's that inconsistent offensively, also undersized, which doesn't always age well, and a player who's kind of constantly hurt. And I don't think they're actually rushing to sign him to an extension. I think for both sides, it makes sense to let him play it out. You can give him the qualifying offer. With his profile, he might accept it. Honestly, I don't know how many guys are going to get 22 million with his profile. And then you maybe get that extra year, and then it's, then he's in his early 30s, and you say goodbye anyway. So yeah, I think there's no going back. There's no extension coming for Kwan from either side. It doesn't make any sense.
This is like the reverse of the Josh Naylor situation. It is the Josh Naylor situation, but like their concerns were body type and
health history.
Health and Kwan's really no different. The body type's in the different range. He's small. And he kind of breaks down as the season goes on. And he also has his own injury history. So it's very similar to the Josh Naylor situation, just on the other end of the spectrum, which tells me, again, I think he'll play as a Guardian in 2026. If they're out of the race for some reason in July, he'll be traded. And if they're in the race, they'll hang on to him. And then, December 4th, 2026, maybe he gets traded before the lockout. I don't know. But I don't see him playing here in 2027. I would have been okay with Josh Naylor playing for the Guardians last year. I'd be okay with Steven Kwan playing for the Guardians in 2027, but I think he's not going to play 2027.
I think his whether or not he plays here in 2027 isn't as much dependent on him as it is dependent on the young players that we're hoping to step up in the outfield.
Yeah, they had first base guys they had Manzardo and Kafis on the way, so they could trade Naylor where. We don't know yet for Kwan for sure. Speaking of outfielders, John wanted to know if Cedric Mullins would have been a good option for the Guardians in center field. Would you rather have had him, Lane Thomas, or bet on the system? I said at the beginning of the offseason, I would have been okay with Cedric Mullins. He wouldn't be my first choice, but I'd have been okay with him. 1 year, $7 million, not bad. The Rays got him, I think, at a good rate. He's definitely a platoon guy now, but I don't know. Does this team need another left-handed platoon outfielder? Maybe.
I'd rather have Thomas personally. I know you're all out on Thomas, but I'd rather have.
I just can't add another injury-prone guy to the rotation of DeLauder and Valera. Like, again, I keep saying this. Like, if you get 120 games combined with Valera and DeLauder, that might be a good thing. What is Thomas going to get you? Like, you don't know. So I would have been okay with Mullins. He would have been my first choice, and I'm fine with the Rays taking him off the board now because. The Guardians need to be efficient.
The offense was so bad a year ago. I had no interest. Like he really looks like a player who's kind of hit that age part, and he doesn't hit the ball hard. He doesn't do a lot of those things that help a player maintain into his 30s. He was all defense, no bat, and this team doesn't need all defense, no bat right now.
Yeah. Matt, I'm sorry, this is David as well. This is Matt actually. If Ralphy Velazquez picks up where he left off last year and keeps it going, what does his ceiling look like in 2026? I told Matt I will take any excuse to talk about Ralphy Velazquez. He is my new prospect crush. Or he has been, but I mean, this is the guy that I'm hitching my wagon to pretty hard at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I'll always kind of. I'm loving it from the perspective of I had the highest ranking on him in his draft class, so every time he does that, it makes me look a little bit like I know what I'm talking about. But I think. It's always going to be limited by position. I would love to see a situation where they at least try him a little more in the outfield. You and I have discussed that from time to time. I don't know if that's ever going to be a thing or even if he would naturally take to it. But, and I think, you're probably looking at like a, above average regular, maybe plus player. I mean, that's it. You never really typically project for too much more than that with young guys. I mean, I don't think he would get a chance to help the team this year. I got to be honest, unless he really blows the doors off. But especially because the guys in front of him being young guys. But he's got a chance. There's a chance by the end of the year that he's the number one prospect in the system.
Yeah, if there are graduations, certainly he could be the number one prospect in the system, and he's earned the right to be in that conversation if those players do graduate. All right, I'll tell you what I think about Ralphy Velazquez in 2026 coming up, and then it's time to get busy living or get busy dying we've got more questions on today's episode of Locked On Guardians Mailbag Edition coming up. You know that things happen fast in the NFL. One play, suddenly the game has turned on a dime. It feels different. And that's what makes live betting on FanDuel more exciting. You're not just watching the game. It gives you a chance to react to what's going on in real time and have a little bit of responsible fun. You can place bets as all the action is unfolding, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment in the game. It's best when the game starts to shift. If a receiver gets hot in the game, if a defense makes a big play or makes a turnover as well, creates one, FanDuel lets you jump into those moments. The line of the Browns hasn't changed. They're still giving up 3.5 to the Titans. Ohio State's giving up 4.5 to the Indiana Hoosiers. I think that's the closest line they've had all year. And the Guardians, they are still plus 1,200 to win the American League pennant, along with the Tigers. So they're right even with the Tigers. So that's a good thing. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com to place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. Get you more Guardians talk everywhere if you follow Jeff on social media, Jeff MLB Draft, myself at JL Baseball or JL_baseball, and you can join the Locked On Guardians Insiders Club where we text with the community daily on news, rumors that are happening in Major League Baseball and the Guardians. We also ask them for mailbag questions, and we do monthly video chats, which I'm thinking maybe we'll do Sunday. We also give some bonus content from time to time as well. So that's joinsubtext.com/LockedOnGuardians. And December 8th, insiders look for a big announcement about some new features and some new clubs coming up your way that I think everyone will be interested in. All right, Ralphy Velazquez, I got a hot take here for you. Based on Matt's question, if he picks up where he left off in 2025, you always say this, Jeff. You say prospects aren't blocked. They push their way in. If Ralphy Velazquez does what he did at the end of 2025 all season long, I could see him forcing his way to the majors. I can. I don't think, you and I both aren't 100% sold on CJ Kafis. Manzaro's not a great defensive first baseman. And I don't know, maybe there is room in the outfield for him somewhere. I mean, I've only ever seen him play left field, and it's just okay. I don't know about right field there, but I don't know. The way he hits the ball, if he does, again, based on the premise of the question, if he does what he did in 2025 and 2026, he could make it hard to ignore giving
They
him
just
a spot.
slow play so much.
They do, but hey.
And they like guys to spend some time in AAA because getting used to the ball, getting used to the position, they really have had guys spend extended looks in AAA anymore. So that's my only reason why not.
College. Yeah, no, I get it. Great question from David. Great phrasing too. Shawshank Redemption Index. Who is going to have a bigger redemption arc in 2026? Franco Aleman, George Valera, Daniel Espino, and then non-prospects Arias or David Fry.
I kind of want to say none of them. I know that's not like I've always been a little bit lower on Aleman. Espino, is excited as we all are, it's still a handful of innings for a guy who's only thrown a handful of innings. Like I just can't give my heart, as it were, to a guy who is barely healthy right now and has barely been healthy. Like I want to get excited, I do, but like I lived through Adam Miller. I've lived through so many other guys. Like I'm going to be, until it's more consistent. Fry, I've had some questions with. Gabby, the chase rate's just too dang high. Valera, I think there's kind of a hole in the swing, has always been one of my things. These are none of the guys I've really been super high on. So I'm not really buying any of them. I think there's a chance for contributions from some of these guys. I think they can be solid players, but I kind of see backups for most of these guys and or relievers. They're part-time players at best is kind of what you're looking at with that grouping due to either health or other things.
So what Jeff is saying, for a lot of Christmases, he gave Daniel Espino his heart and he threw it away. So now Jeff only expects lumps of coal every Christmas. That's what he's saying. I'll say Espino. I do think it wouldn't be hard for it to call it a redemption arc. The fact that he pitches like 30 innings this year, 40 inches. That's
fair. Very fair.
The floor is the floor or the ceiling is very low in terms of what it would take to be a redemption arc for him. But I'll say Espino. I can't believe in Alamon anymore just because he never obviously had Espino's ceiling, and there's just a lot of wackiness there. And I don't know about Valera, and yeah, I'm kind of out on Arias at this point. And then, David Fry, the guy just can't, he has some bad luck. It is what it is. We also want to know what's going on with Juan Brito. It seems like last year he was a candidate for a starter, and now he's essentially an afterthought. It's true. I mean, I feel like last season we kept saying Juan Brito is going to be the guy who you plug in at second next year in 2025 and is going to get an opportunity. And then he had a miserable spring training. Then he got hurt, essentially a lost season. Do you think that because like Bazzana's in AAA now, and you're talking about Rocchio being inked in somewhere in the infield, like if that's the case, it does feel like Brito has gone from an afterthought. But it doesn't really matter where you play Brito defensively. Like he's probably going to be a butcher anyway. The question is if he's just going to hit enough to play any position, if you can make a spot for him because of the bat. I don't think Cleveland's given up on him by any means, but I don't know what kind of trade value he has. Like, can you really move him after what happened to him in 2025? Or, like if he's kind of a guy that's been squeezed out of the starting picture job for 2026, like it'd be interesting to use him in a trade package, but like, is his value damaged at all because of what happened last year?
Two hot takes on it. One, I and they're kind of contradictory, so bear with me. I do think his trade value is a little bit damaged just because any player who is hurt, their trade value is damaged. When you miss that much time, you got to turn around and prove it. But the second part of it is I don't think that he is an afterthought to the people who matter. Like he's an afterthought to the discussions, to the blogospheres, to, this or that. But like this team went out of their way to get him and add him to their, the 40-man roster when he was, down in A-ball. They have believed in him throughout. He got hurt and he missed time, and that stinks, but it does not change what they liked about him. And it does not change that, like, this is the team that loves to buy low. This is a team that is always kind of focused on getting guys at the nadir of their value. They're not going to, last year stunk because they expected him to contribute, but that injury meant he couldn't. So I think to the people who matter, to the people who evaluate, he is still very much in the mix. And I wouldn't be shocked if he ended up breaking camp with the team this year.
Yeah, I could see that for sure. I absolutely agree with that. I wouldn't be upset about it either because I do think there's an ability for him to improve the floor of the lineup that way.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
All right. We had two questions. I didn't get to this in this order. We had two questions about José Ramírez and he hit second last year, start the year. And Anthony and John asked about why they went away with it from that and if it'll be something they try again next year. I kind of think the ship has sailed on that. Honestly.
Agreed.
They've tried it multiple times. It hasn't worked.
He doesn't like it.
He doesn't like it. And the problem is he has to hit third because he's a switch hitter. So he breaks up all the lefties. That's the issue with them being so left-handed is that they do, as much as we know left-handed hitters play better in this ballpark, and you face more right-handed pitchers, you still got to find a way to break them up in your lineup when you can, and him being a switch hitter allows him to do that. So unless they got to address who hits second. They got to figure that out. And maybe that's Bazzana in the future. But, yeah, I think that ship has sailed on him. Not much to say there.
You just got to – baseball players are, they have a comfort zone, and he's just not comfortable there. He has said and he's never performed well in that spot. So that's why they need to make that trade. And if it's not, Bazzana probably is, more of a midseason guy for them, but it's like a Nootbaar. Donovan would be the ideal, obviously, but it's like getting someone like that. They need to get someone they can plug in there because it's the most important spot in the lineup. We know this. That's what stats tell us. So that's where they specifically need to look outside and get assistance with.
These two questions kind of feel connected, so I'll put them together and we can kind of answer them so we can get to this one. But Carl and Todd both had questions about utility players. Carl said, do Arias and Rocchio have any trade value? And Todd asked about utility players. Who would you keep and who you would move on from? I would keep, I feel like I would keep Daniel Schneemann over Martinez.
Agreed.
I like the approach from Schneemann a little bit better. He hits the ball a little bit harder sometimes.
He runs well. He can play multiple spots. He's got a good arm. He's a better defender.
There's more defensive versatility with Schneemann than there is Martinez.
I got to be honest. He hasn't looked terrible at shortstop. Like, one could make a case that, like, when he's in one of his hot stretches, like that he could play shortstop and it's not going to be the worst thing in the world. Like I feel like he plays probably the third best shortstop in the team. So I agree. Schneemann is the guy I like the most.
Here's how I would look at it.
Yeah.
Okay, let's say there's an injury. Like Schneemann, we'll say Schneemann's a utility guy, and he's a guy you don't want to be having play 140 games, right? But let's say there's an injury and he is the guy who has to play 80 games, even if he wanted to, or 100 games, even if he'd rather him play 80. Which guy are you more comfortable with plugging in
Schneemann
to a spot where there's an injury? And that's how I think you have to look at it. Is which guy would you be more comfortable plugging in? And I think it's Schneemann. As far as Arias or Rocchio, I don't think Arias has any trade value at this point. He has no options.
I think he does.
I know. You think the other teams would consider him an upgrade.
There's so few shortstops in baseball that like I've had at least 5 other Locked On hosts ask like, do you think Cleveland would consider trading Arias? Like that their teams need shortstops badly, and they've looked at Arias as like a candidate just because he can handle it defensively. So I think there's always value in that. Like guys have carved out long careers with his profile, just being able to be a plus defender and do enough with the bat. So is he a piece in a trade? No, but like I know I was texting you about, and we'll save it for another day, a potential trade idea that where he was the B piece, and I think that might be where it makes sense. But it's just that situation. I think they both have trade value because we talked about there's a complete shortage of up the middle talent right now in free agency and on the trade block, and having a guy who can be a plus defender at those positions that at least gives them value, and then they were, somewhat close to league average. Gabby was a 77 in WRC plus, and Rocchio when he came back was close to 100. So yeah, I think there's value in both.
And last question from Aaron, setting aside Junior Caminero, so that would be the obvious answer here. Which prospect that was traded away in the past few years do you want back the most?
It's again the question, like what counts as the last few years, I guess. It's like, because that's probably not Yandy at this point. That's too many years ago.
I was going to say, I think we both would say Yandy. I'm trying to think the last prospect they traded that I would want back. And
the last few years, it's like, it's probably, God, I'm blanking on his name. The left-handed pitcher they traded to the Giants.
Brezhnehan.
That's probably the guy that I would say.
If you're like years ago, so
if you're like last, few years, to me, that's like within the last 4 years. So if I'm looking at the last 4 years, it's probably Brezhnehan.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of another prospect that they've traded since then where I'm like, ooh, would really like to have that one back. If it's not Caminero, then it's, I guess Nolan Jones's 2023 season. But you have him back now, and he hasn't repeated that yet. So I don't know if that necessarily.
Maybe Alex Call, but I don't think they traded him. I think they cut him. But like I would like Alex Call as a 4th outfielder on this team right now, an occasional platoon guy, maybe even a starter. He would probably be a starter for this team. I don't know what I'm talking about. He would have been good enough to be their starting right fielder last year.
Yeah, I don't know what constitutes as a few years, but if it's not Caminero, the most obvious answer is Yandy Diaz. If years are not necessarily dependent here, but yeah, that's all we got time for today. We hope we answered enough of your questions. Appreciate all the insiders asking us some interesting questions to fill up the mailbag. We'll do one again in January. Jeff is back with you on Monday to do a weekend wrap up. And Jeff, you got some other stuff you're going to get into on Monday as well.
Yeah, I'll do a people like in the history pieces. So let me know. Do you want me to do another trade tree? Do you want me to take apart a draft year? Do you want me to take apart a draft round? Comments below, whatever gets the most, I will do. And then I'll also talk just in general. MLB dropped their top 100 draft prospects. So I'm going to take some time, talk about like some familiar names, some guys we talked about in the past, talk about Jim Tomey's son. Let's just put it on Front Street. We're going to talk about Tomey's son a bit in that grouping as well. So, make sure you are tuned in if you want to hear a little bit of draft, a little bit of history, and a little bit of news.
Should be a fun one. All right. Well,
thanks.
Have a warm and safe weekend.
Yep. Thank you all for joining us. Remember to rate and review, download daily, hit that thumbs up, put a comment below, and go Guardians, go.